Y'all ready? I've got an old barn. You got some lights. Let's put on a show.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, hello and welcome to Living with Lions, the Mountain Lion Foundation's monthly webinar series. I'm Josh Rosenau, the Director of Policy and Advocacy for the Mountain Lion Foundation, and I'm deeply honored to be here with all of you today. The Mountain Lion Foundation is a national nonprofit organization. Our work is focused on ensuring that the ecologically critical mountain lion survives and flourishes in the wild. We do this in three key ways. First, wherever people live or hike or work in mountain lion country, we offer community-based coexistence trainings and support, helping people keep themselves and their families and livestock safe, while also keeping their lion neighbors safe as well. Second, we work with partners and volunteers and people like you all over the United States to advocate at the state and federal levels to ensure that strong protections are in place for mountain lions and their habitats. We stand up for lions wherever they're being overhunted or otherwise persecuted. That's especially important because lions make ecosystems healthier, and healthy ecosystems are more resilient in the face of climate change. Third, and importantly, we also do a lot of educational programming to correct misconceptions about mountain lions and help people and decision makers understand just how important they are and how straightforward and cost effective it can be to coexist peacefully with mountain lions. With this Living with Lions webinar series each month, we cover a new angle and how people and mountain lions can peacefully coexist. The script also has a Q&A, but we're instructions on how people can ask questions. But this month, just as we were about to hit record, Zoom went down. So we're switching this up. This month, we're talking about a bill in California that would roll back a lot of important protections that mountain lions have had in that state for over 30 years. And very excited to be joined by Beth Pratt from the National Wildlife Federation and Winston Vickers, who is the now retired as director of the California Mountain Lion Project at UC Davis and has done a lot of really critical work and research on these lions. Beth Pratt has been with us before. Both of them have been guests on this series before. Beth is the author of books about mountain lions and has done a lot of incredibly important work to get road crossings built to get mountain lions back where they belong. And so I'm going to kick things. I was going to kick things off to you, Beth, first, and then go from there, right? Or no, was I going to do this?
I think you were going to review SB 818.
Yes.
See, this Zoom going down has us all flustered.
We're all flustered. We'll figure it out, though.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, so SB 818 is a bill that was filed about a month ago by a senator from the 4th District of California, which goes all the way up into the Sierras and almost down to the Bay. And the proposal, this is an area where there was the tragic death of a young man about a year ago who was out shed antler hunting for reasons that no one can particularly explain. There was an incident with him and his brother, and she's named the bill in honor of the two of them, which is an interesting choice. So it's very much pitched as a response to that single incident, and we can talk a little bit more about how unique and singular it was. It would allow in El Dorado County, which is way up in the Sierras, a lot of rural wilderness out there, a lot of mountain lions, would allow people to get a recreational license from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife to send hound teams into the woods to chase after mountain lions. The premise is that it would be tree and free, is what the bill says, that they could chase the mountain lions, but that they're not supposed to kill them. There are concerns about how that would actually work, and we can talk a little bit more about that. But right now, the Mountain Lion Foundation and a lot of other partner organizations, including the National Wildlife Federation, a lot of other wildlife groups and animal welfare groups all over the place, have been doing a lot of lobbying. We've got a petition up on our website that people can sign, and a lot of scientists and legal experts have put in comment. The concerns with this bill are that it is, I can't remember if I had a slide on this. I don't think so. No. The SB 818 is unlawful It would go directly against Prop 117 that was passed in 1990 that protects mountain lions from being hunted or taken in any sense. And being chased by dogs is one of the things that is specifically prohibited, even if you don't shoot it at the end. It's also unscientific. There's no evidence that this sort of chasing mountain lions around randomly through the forests will do anything to promote public safety. And there's a lot of reasons to think that could undermine public safety, that it could chase those when in other states that have hound hunting, these sorts of chases have brought hound teams into people's backyards. They've come up against hikers, especially people who might have their own pets on a leash or off leash in the wilderness. They can get into endangered species that are active in those woods, including foxes, ground nesting birds. And of course, they could chase those mountain lions away from their cubs. They could tree a mountain lion or get it caught in a place where it's on the ground and the hunter will perceive a threat to his hounds and feel legally justified in then shooting the mountain lion. So there's a lot of ways that it could go pretty badly wrong for the public and for wildlife. And it steps on top of a study that the California Department of Wildlife and Fish and Wildlife and other partners, including the Mountain Lion Foundation, in an advisory role on the non-lethal parts of this study, is looking at hound hazing, non-lethal deterrence, and other tools to address conflict and other unwanted encounters with mountain lions that is happening in this same region, and where the hound pursuit that would follow from this bill could step right on top of that research study. So it's unscientific, it's dangerous to communities, it's dangerous to wildlife. And Beth and Winston can talk more about some of the scientific concerns with this and the public safety concerns. And the other thing is that this is great mountain lion habitat. It's a place where mountain lions are a beloved part of the landscape. And the fear-mongering that has accompanied this bill really seems like an attempt to reverse 30 years of amazing progress that California has made in changing people's relationships with mountain lions and other carnivores in the landscape. And so I'll pass that to Beth, who has some cool examples in her own backyard.
Yeah, what you're seeing is a video of just a few months of mountain lion sightings. This is 100 feet from my home, and I live in the Sierra foothills in a really rural area, population just a few hundred. I am in Senator Alvarado Gill's district, and I have lived here for 26 years. And I am just proud to share my home with mountain lions and bears and bobcats. And for me, each one of these sightings are a gift. I have 6 dogs and 2 cats, and we have coexisted, just fine for those 26 years. I've also worked in Yellowstone and hiked with grizzlies and wolves. And so what I'm going to focus on before I pass it off to Winston to take more of a deep dive into the science and why this bill also is not purporting the science. Just going to talk a little bit about coexistence, both personally myself, and then the work we do in the Los Angeles area about coexisting with mountain lions. But just to show you again, those mountain lions make frequent appearances on my property. And that is that video you just saw of both a female with her 2 kittens, of the dominant male that comes in once in a while, was just in a few month period. So I work for the National Wildlife Federation and have for 14 years now. It's one of the oldest and largest conservation groups in the country. We are very much bipartisan. We represent, Californian animal rights folks, along with, Midwestern hunters. We really do look at scientific measures to conserve wildlife and also to coexist with wildlife. And I'm very proud to work for the organization. Many of you perhaps know the National Wildlife Federation from Ranger Rick you read as a kid. But I oversee all of their California work. And It's wonderful. I work most notably on the Wallace-Annenberg Wildlife Crossing and coexisting with mountain lions like our famous and late P22 in the LA area. And what I wanted to talk about was the coexistence measures. And I worked in Yosemite as well and live outside Yosemite on coexisting with bears for a decade. And for me, what was really interesting about that is once you looked at the scientific measures and the coexistence strategies that worked in the park, the bear conflict was minimized almost to zero. In the 90s, you had bears breaking into cars. You had bears, raiding campsites because we as the people were not doing the right things. And the only recourse for the park at that time was shooting the bears. And it didn't work. The problem never went away. You had new bears coming in and you were having just the same problem. But when the park started stating, wait a minute, this is a people problem, not a bear problem, and people started doing the things we know worked, including storing food the correct way, not leaving food in the cars when you're backpacking, making sure that you are using approved bear canisters. Yosemite Valley went from about $750,000 in property damage to I think it was almost zero, under 10,000 in some years. The education continues to make sure that trend continues, but we see when we do the right things to coexist, how it can work. I am someone who's 56 years old. I have been coexisting with predators such as grizzly bears, wolves, mountain lions, bobcats for almost my entire life. I live up here in the Sierra foothills. Again, I have animals that, of course, I would be devastated if they were attacked, but I focus on coexistence practices to make sure the risk is close to zero. It is never zero, but with wildlife, the risk is pretty darn close. Most wildlife encounters in the United States and beyond end just fine. Most encounters end with you not knowing you've ever even had an encounter. I have hiked the John Muir Trail. I hike in Yosemite, observing wildlife for most of my 35 years living in California, and I have never had one incident. I have come within 50 feet of a mountain lion several times. I've had 6 sightings. Again, I want to stress it's never zero risk, but the risk with wildlife is so minimal. Indeed, what's on my radar for risk when I am a female hiking alone is more other people. There's a sexual assault that happens every minute in this country. I think it's something like 140 women are killed every day in this country. So for me, I try to put the risk in perspective. It's never zero risk, but it is minimal risk. Just in California alone, 4,000 people a year die on average from automobile accidents, where if you look at the statistics for mountain lions harming a person in 100 years, we have with 40 million people in this state. The California Department of Fish and Wildlife statistics show that there have been 50 attacks and 7 of them being fatal. Now, I realize that those statistics are people who have been injured or killed, and we never want it to happen. But what I ask is that people just put the risk in perspective, that your car is much more dangerous than a mountain lion will ever be to you. Having said that, though, are there things you can do to minimize? And of course there is. But even said all that, much like you can do everything with a car, put on your seatbelt and drive the right way, sometimes things will happen which is not the fault of the people or not the fault of the animal. But what I like to focus on, and why I think this bill is so misguided, is because the bill is proposing something that will not help. And as we've said, and as Winston will get into, will actually do more harm, not just with mountain lions, but with community safety, with repercussions to other wildlife in the area, and I could go on. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the LA area as a case study. And what I guess is also concerning to me is this bill is exempting one county who is not practicing best practices, whereas other places like the LA County and places where I live are doing the right thing And again, we're not seeing at least the same level of incidence as we are elsewhere. If you look at the greater Los Angeles metropolitan area, it is 18 million people in 5 counties, and that includes Los Angeles County, Ventura County, and others where there are mountain lions. And there are just as many mountain lions in some of those areas as there are where I live or in El Dorado County. But there are many, many more people. The Santa Monica Mountains, for instance, you have just as much a chance of seeing a mountain lion as you do up here in Mariposa County where I live or in El Dorado County. And again, if you look at the statistics, despite having many more people, there has not been a fatal attack down there since at least 1986 or beyond, when CDFW was tracking by county. The coexistence measures and the level of education that is happening in the LA County, especially around P22 and the Wallace-Annenberg Wildlife Crossing and partners like Cougar Conservancy and the Mountain Lion Foundation, folks are at a very heightened level of awareness and are practicing, not everywhere, but in a lot of areas, good coexisting measures, such as not feeding wildlife, such as ensuring that your livestock is protected, that your pets are protected by doing certain things like enclosing, looking at safe human practices. Again, it's not going to eliminate every attack, but it is definitely going to get that risk down to very close to zero. So I think we should look at the Los Angeles greater metropolitan area as a test, as an example of that these practices that are science-based, that we know are effective, can actually have one of the most densely populated metropolitan areas in the country coexisting with mountain lions in a way that keeps both the wildlife and the people as safe as can be, and shows that these are the practices a bill like SB 818 should be focused on. We are here to help El Dorado County or any other county. Again, my organization, the National Wildlife Federation, organizations like the Mountain Lion Foundation, I know is already helping with coexistence measures there. We just want it to be based on what will work and what we know works. So let's look at where putting things in bills like this of what's being done right and allows a safer future for both mountain lions and people, and not putting things in a bill that we know will likely not work and indeed have other harm to either wildlife or people. So to turn it over to Dr. Winston Vickers, who I've known for years, he's an incredible scientist who has worked on mountain lions statewide, to tell you a little bit about and diving deeper into why, again, scientifically, this won't work. We listen to scientists when we want to know if it rains. Let's listen to the scientists to tell us what will work when it looks at how to minimize conflict with mountain lions and other wildlife. So Dr. Winston Vickers, please take it away.
Hi, thanks, Beth. A lot of really good points, and appreciate all of your insight from Southern California. Dr. Winston Vickers. I'm a veterinarian, and I have a lot of experience, not only, of course, with animals in general, but I've been working on mountain lion research for 22 years, and in Southern California predominantly, but also Northeast California and the North Coast where I live currently. And also we have mountain lions come through our neighborhood and bears and so forth. So I'm in that exact same situation as the people in El Dorado County and Beth. But I've done a lot of work in Southern California, south of LA, in a very similar situation in the Santa Ana Mountains, the Peninsula Range, and very, very similar outlook or findings from there. And I'm going to talk about that as well as from other studies. I do want to first, though, offer my condolences to the family of Wyatt and Taylor Brooks. I know that's a horrible tragedy for the family and for the community, and it spurs a desire to do something within the context of how rare that kind of an event is. And I think that based on my experience, I've done a lot of work with hounds to capture mountain lions. I know hound hunting, inside and out. I've worked with great houndsmen, and I know what it's like, the reality of it. And it's not this sort of simple, you turn the hounds loose, they go out there, they chase the cat, it goes up a tree, and you leave. Sounds pretty benign, but in actuality, lots of uncontrollable bad things can happen. And I've personally seen plenty of bad things happening, on mountain lion hunts with hounds for research, where we're super careful, much less, just kind of random, just random chasing with hounds. There is a study, as was mentioned earlier by Josh, going on right now in El Dorado County. And I think more than anything, this bill is premature at best, because you've got a study going that includes looking at responses to hounds. Lots of studies have been done about responses to hounds over the United States. And for the most part, they indicate that, yes, you can certainly chase a mountain lion away from a particular spot with hounds, but they tend to come back pretty darn quickly. I've seen a mountain lion be chased away by hounds, lose the hounds, and be back at the same spot where I saw him leave in 15 minutes. So, the average hound chase only goes a few hundred yards. And even in those studies that have looked at how far the animals go with repetitive chasing and, to actually leave the area, it's still within the hundreds of yards type of distances. And a mountain lion can cover that in minutes. So it's not like you're chasing them entirely out of the country, with a hound chase. So it just doesn't, practically speaking, that's not expected to do anything. Some studies have shown that the animals, at least juvenile animals, may tend to stay away from human habitat a little bit, if they're chased with hounds. But that study came out of Nevada, where they were not only chased with hounds, they were hunted with hounds. There were lots of people out there in the landscape doing other kinds of hunting, doing trapping. The mountain lions were getting caught in foothold traps, all sorts of negative things that were associated with humans. So you would expect them to maybe give humans a little wider berth, but they were also attracted to areas where deer were being fed, or where deer could find food more easily. So, in that case, was it being attracted away, or was it being chased? And in this case, there's no particular effort in the bill to dictate where the hounds would be used, near housing or out in the woods. The density of mountain lions on this landscape is roughly the same as density everywhere else. It's just a few animals per 60 square miles or 100 square kilometers, 1 to 3 animals typically. And so it's not like they can just go out there and instantly jump on a mountain lion track. Even when they do, a lot of times the dogs lose the trail. And so the mountain lions are out there just coursing around. They're not actually necessarily treeing the animal every time. In fact, most of the time they don't. So the whole dynamic of it is different. And finally, the unintended consequences that have been well researched in mountain lion, in hound hunting research, that they disturb deer. They can tend to make deer home ranges 4 or 5 times as big as they were before the hounds came through. They prevent deer from hunting or eating as they should. They can kill fawns. They can kill mountain lion kittens that they come upon. I've seen hounds get in fights with livestock herding dogs. I've seen hounds chase a mountain lion right through a housing development. Once the hounds are loose, there's no control of them. And so they can do all kinds of damage to other wildlife, as well as to domestic animals. So it's anybody that kind of paints it as a very benign process is not is not being accurate. I think that the Orange County experience, like Beth's, there's lots of people, they have sightings all the time down there. Our research for 20 years in Southern California shows that mountain lions are relatively near people on a relatively common basis that are out there hiking, and they never have or they don't never have incidents, but incidents are incredibly rare. They may sight a mountain lion, but almost all the time the mountain lions are leaving the area after sighting a human. Human presence has been shown to be the most powerful deterrent to mountain lion presence. Excuse me. So we've done research with human voices being played randomly, as have other researchers, and they do tend to skirt areas where human voices occur. So, we're the scariest thing on the landscape. We're scarier typically than the hounds. So I think those are some of the major things. And I'd also say, just from a common sense standpoint, if we think of solitary, wide-ranging predators on the landscape, a comparison might be with sharks. Would we want to put sharks or chase sharks around because there was an attack by a shark? Shark attacks are more common than mountain lion attacks. And so would we constantly have boats out there running around chasing sharks and really expect that to do anything in this state the size of California? So it's just, conceptually it has an appeal, but in practical terms, it has more harm to do than it would do good, in my opinion. And I think that's borne out. The slide shows something that can be borne out by some, I think are getting an echo. Somebody's, yeah, maybe that stopped it. Thanks, Beth. This is mountain lion depredation kills in California by county. We see El Dorado County has certainly, that's just in 3 years, has had more depredation kills than any other county, even multiple counties combined. And they also have apparently a lot of concern about interactions. And so the research by Justin Dellinger and Steve Torres with California Department of Fish and Wildlife suggested that in those counties that had the highest depredation kills, in 1 year they had higher depredation kills the next year as well, which is because of the disruption of the social order of mountain lions, where males are killed and new males come in, but oftentimes more than one new male may come in to try to fill the niche of a territorial male that's removed. And the majority of depredation kills of mountain lions are males. So if you think about the dynamic within mountain lion populations, the males are always competing or settling into territories. And every time you disrupt that whole dynamic between the males, then it sort of shuffles the deck. And all of a sudden there's more scooting around the landscape. And that increases the chances that they're going to run into livestock animals and opportunistically take unprotected ones, versus just kind of being more focused on deer. Human disturbance also diminishes the feeding time of mountain lions on deer kills. And so if that means they have to go out there and kill more deer than they otherwise would if they're disturbed. And this has been shown clearly in other research in California. So if you think about it from a deer hunter's perspective, having dogs running around the woods is going to be moving deer all around. That's going to reduce deer fitness and possibly cause fawns to get killed or abandoned by their mothers. And then you're going to have more deer killed by the mountain lions because they're getting pushed off of their existing kills. They have to go kill something else. So there are just so many bycatch or unintended consequences of turning hounds loose on the landscape. It's just sort of hard to enumerate them all in one talk like this, but I think I will pause there. And unfortunately, we don't have the ability to take questions since we had a Zoom issue, but we're going to try to. There may be others that come up as we talk a little bit more here.
Winston, I wanted to just, while you're on the slide, point out, as you were saying when we were discussing it, that, to me, this really does tell a story that, if El Dorado County is just this, bright red for a number of incidences, and if, mountain lions don't respect, county boundaries, right? And as we know, Mariposa County, where I live, and as we talked about the 5-county area down in LA that I cited, if it, this is not a mountain lion problem, it is what practices, coexistence practices are people doing problem, because you would expect to see the same rate based on mountain lions are extremely self-regulating in population. We know that they pretty much are at the same rate where they can be in the state. So to me, this points at how can we enable El Dorado County through coexistence measures that work to get that down. But again, this isn't a mountain lion problem, but a coexistence practices problem is how I look at it. And
El Dorado County has as many depredation kills in the last in the 3 years. This is before that incident last year. More than in the next 2 highest rates counties elsewhere, right? It's out of proportion to anything else. And in California, more mountain lions are killed by people than by any other cause, right? It's still, even without hunting, human activity is having an enormous, even before you get to roads, rodenticides, habitat loss, humans are having an enormous impact on mountain lions' lives, and that affects behavior in all the way that you were talking about.
Yeah, and I did want to also just touch on, again, my heart does go out to the family too. This is what we never want to happen. And if again, we want to focus on practices that it'll never be zero. Is, again, I can't guarantee you're going to walk down the street tomorrow and a human's not gonna. In fact, your risk is much higher, but we can get it as close to zero as possible. So I really, to honor this young man, would love to focus on practices that will at least help. But in some of these, very random, perhaps nothing would have helped. But again, let's work on science-based solutions. And just, I wanted to really reinforce, Winston, what you talked about, is that these mountain lions, as we see, are not waiting in the woods trying to hunt us. It is such a rare attack when something like this does happen. And there's been, as you mentioned, the study where they played human voices. The mountain lions fled, yet they'd play a frog and they were okay. Down in Southern California, again, where P22 existed in a park for 10 years that 10 million people visit, along with the population, the heightened urban population around, and for, most of his life coexisted quite peacefully with people. You hardly ever saw him except on trail cams. But the same national, that same population of mountain lions, of which P22 is just one in that, or that sort of Santa Monica Mountains chain, the National Park Service has done study after study to show that one result was they were shifting their patterns in hunting to hunt more late at night than most mountain lions, which does actually make it harder for them to survive because they wanted to avoid people. Of the cats in that Santa Monica Mountains study, they would find that the cats, even though they had to navigate our highly peopled landscapes, whether it be backyards or whatever, they would retreat. They would stay most of the time more than a kilometer away from human activity. So even in an area like that, they were trying to avoid us as much as possible. And I'll even offer one more for P22 that I thought was so indicative that, again, these mountain lions are not waiting in the wings. He coexisted in an area heavily recreated, and there's a famous trail cam photo early on where P22, he's for some reason it's like 6 a.m. and he's in front of the camera and it's clicking away, and then he moves and you can still sort of see like his ear or something, and a jogger goes by. Humans were not on his menu. He was avoiding us, and And that is, for the most part, for mountain lions. It is a rare, rare instance when attack does happen.
There was
go ahead,
I was
Jeff.
talking to a researcher in Washington State a while back who was saying, he has just given up trying to come up with things that are less likely than an encounter with a mountain lion because it's so rare.
Right.
And which also means that it's really hard to do science on it. There's not a way to put any science on, connecting that one incident that is the first time in 20 years that this has happened to say that we can respond to it with policy. And like Winston, you were saying, the research that's going on in El Dorado County and research that's happening elsewhere in the country informs this and tells us what works, what doesn't work in terms of keeping mountain lions away from livestock, in terms of keeping them away from communities. And that we can apply, but to try to connect this to a single incident is just not how policy should work, and it's certainly not how science does work.
I might just add that when we're thinking about the untoward side effects and also mountain lion mortality in California, the recent studies have shown that the overall density of mountain lions is dependent on the habitat and on the prey. And so the density, whether it's up in the Sierras or down in Southern California, coastal range, the densities are approximately the same. So this is not this kind of spike in El Dorado County is not because there's tons more mountain lions there. In fact, the El Dorado National Forest was one of the places where the research was done to establish density for that region. And so it's, I think some might think, well, we must have a lot more mountain lions. That's not true. But people do see them more often. And this is something that I've run into compared to 20 plus years ago, is that there's way more people that send me pictures of mountain lions and so forth because they have their ring cameras, the cameras like Beth has that show the mountain lions that have been walking by all along, but now we know they're walking by because they get recorded. And our research in Southern California, starting 20 plus years ago, showed us right off the bat that in suburban Orange County, that mountain lions were going in and among the houses now and then, or hunting at night and then leaving during the day, or that they were way more likely to be at least in somewhat close proximity, but then generally staying away from humans as we see everywhere else. So it's not that this is new. This is not that these are new things, or that they are things that only happen here. Big cats and mountain lions and conflict is the subject of all kinds of effort, all over the country, all over the world. And if the answers were easy, we would have come to conclusions by now. But things that we do know work, as Beth has said, we know that protecting livestock adequately with pens, with livestock guardian dogs, there's shielding of pens. There's all kinds of things that are being experimented with, including what Julie Young is doing in her study in El Dorado County. So we steadily know more and understand more, but what we know for sure is that just killing the random mountain lion that comes through, or every mountain lion that preys on livestock, doesn't solve the problem. I'll tell one other quick anecdote. Project that I was working with up here on the North Coast had a mountain lion come through and kill a goat, and it was a collared mountain lion. The researcher helped the man reinforce his pen, didn't have any problems for a while. Then he kind of lost track, wasn't doing a good job of keeping them in the pen. He lost another mountain lion to another collared mountain lion. Same sequence again. A few months later, same thing happened. So had that first collared mountain lion been killed, the man still would have lost goats to the second mountain lion. And then had the first one and the second one been killed, he still would have lost goats to the third one because he was not consistently taking the steps that he needed to take. So it's, and because they had collars, we knew they were different mountain lions. It wasn't like otherwise it might have been interpreted it was the same mountain lion coming back again and again. So it just tells you that it's up to us to do all we can to minimize the whole disruption of the population. And the populations in California, many of them are not doing well because of this kind of thing.
Yeah, Winston, I think that's such a good point. We've been trying to kill predators for, hundreds of years, and indeed it doesn't solve the issue. Unless we want a world with no wildlife, which I think A, most of us don't want intrinsically, but B, we are wildlife and that would destroy ecosystems we depend on. I think we really need, we're getting smarter. We again, science has showed us solutions that work. And so, just killing or hazing or wanting to, do things that are not going to promote coexistence. We do want to give folks the tools to do better. And I don't think that, the fear mongering that goes on, and I'll add to your, also the other thing that's changed, not just the Ring cameras, which we love, but it does give the impression there's more mountain lions when indeed they've always been walking through my backyard. I just didn't know it. But also we have social media where, those also can be shared more widely, where back when I was in the old timey days, when I was a youngster, you wouldn't know about that unless, you saw your neighbor or something. But I also think, part of it is learning about mountain lion behavior. To me, what is, disturbing to me is fear mongering actually, can promote solutions that could actually put people more at risk. So, let's look at these scientific based solutions, build community so that we can keep both people and wildlife safer together around that. I wish there were a magic answer too. I wish there were a magic answer for me as a female where I could be assured there was some magic scientific solution that, every person I encounter, might not be a threat, but I know that potentially it could be. And I think but on the other hand, we don't go chasing off every human from the trails, right? It's the same principle. Most encounters are going to end fine. And let's just put the risk in perspective and do what we can to minimize conflict.
And there's so much there. Yeah, there's so many great tools out there that exist that I know National Wildlife Federation, CDFW, Mountain Lion Foundation, a lot of other partner groups that we work with try to get out into the communities and try to teach people how to use. A lot of these are not, some of these are new, the electronic deterrents, but livestock guardian dogs people have been using for thousands of years. Fences are not anything new. And so some of it is people got out of habits when mountain lions and other carnivores were driven off the landscape. And so it's just relearning things that had been known before. And this conversation about SB 18 is a distraction from a focus on solutions that we know work. And so we can circle back to that and to things that people can do to change that conversation. So on the Mountain Lion Foundation website, we've got a petition that people can sign, basically co-signing the comment letter that we submitted asking legislators to oppose SB 818. There's going to be a committee hearing in the Natural Resources and Water Committee in the California State Senate on April 22nd at 9 a.m., first thing in the morning. We would love people to show up there. California's a big state, not necessarily expecting that everyone from San Diego is going to make the trek to Sacramento that morning. But if you can, that'd be great. And we'll be setting up some information and sending out emails to Mountain Lion Foundation members, and other partner groups are going to be doing the same. And then we're going to include links on, when this goes up on YouTube, we'll include links that people can click to find out more information, to find that petition, find the event, and find other ways that they can tie into the effort to stop this legislation. And once it's over, to move the conversation towards something that's going to be more productive. Because there are things that the state and the county can be doing differently. Some of those are things that the county government acknowledges need to happen, like getting people to stop feeding deer in their yards, which when you feed the prey in your yard, it's going to encourage the carnivores to come closer. And these sorts of coexistence practices that people can do with livestock, especially small livestock owners, pet owners, communities can do to put those practices in. It's animal training. It's teaching the wild animals where they need to be and teaching the people's animals where they need to be and how to keep them apart. And that's something we can do. That's something that the state has done to varying degrees, depending on how much budget was available for it. And this measure is just not going to move any of that forward. And for all the reasons that you guys have talked about, is going to move us back in a lot of ways.
Thank you. And I know, again, because of Zoom being down, that we were not able to answer questions, but my email is just Google Beth Pratt. It's everywhere, but it's prattb@nwf.org. Happy to answer any questions that you have. I know that the Mountain Lion Foundation obviously is here as a resource. And Winston, I don't know if you want to give out your email, but Winston, on the science, he has been studying these cats for so long. He knows their behavior. He knows what works and doesn't, and what the science tells us and guides us the way.
Well, thanks. And the Wildlife Health Center website, UC Davis Wildlife Health Center, has our project information on it, and we have a film, camountainlions.com, that can be accessed that talks about California mountain lions. But I think one other point just to make to Josh's statement a minute ago is that if people expect to be getting a solution out of this kind of approach, they may then decide not to do the other things that we know do work. They may get a false sense of security, out of it, knowing, oh, there's hounds out there running around, so everything's probably going to be okay, when actually that would not be likely to be the case.
Well, thank you both. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. One more thing, Josh. Just want to point people. We did partner with the Cougar Conservancy. You can go to our website, 101wildlifecrossing.org, and we have a Coexistence FAQ. You can download Coexistence book, and then if you go to P22's YouTube or P22's Facebook page, the YouTube has it all in one place. We did a whole Coexistence video series. These are science-based, all on coexisting with cougars. Really good information that can apply anywhere about mountain lion biology, mountain lion behavior, and what works.
Right.
Well, thank you both for joining us, and I think we'll leave it there. I wish we had questions from the broader public.
Sorry,
I think
folks.
it would have been good, but
Technology.
another time. We're here every month. I don't have notes in front of me on next month's Living with Lions webinar to follow up on this, but we're here every month. We will, and talking about a lot of those same solutions and a lot of those same things. Hopefully we'll have good news to share about what happened with SB 818.
I'll be there.
And hopefully we'll be able to continue sharing good news about how people and mountain lions can live comfortably near each other. Or not too near, but appropriately near. At an appropriate distance.
Yes.
All right. Thank you both so much.
Thanks, Josh.